Jack Dorsey says he's moving to Africa. He's still running Square and Twitter. You were COO there.
Yeah, you answer this question.
I'll get to you in a second. Would you have let that fly?
Well, look, if you want me to try and defend it, here's what I would say. And here are the facts. 75% of Twitter's audience is outside the U.S. About half of its revenue is outside the U.S. Most of the user growth and revenue growth has been coming outside of the U.S. Like it or not, while this is a U.S. HQ'd company, most of the action for this company, I think, is happening outside the U.S. Tough for us sitting here, or tough for some of us sitting here in San Francisco to think that it's not the center of the universe, but the fact is it's not. Couple that with the idea that Jack, I think, is looking at Africa as a huge growth vector for the company, both ultimately
Square.
I think if you ask him, his perspective will ultimately be around users and revenue. And then lastly, I think he's got a view that he has to figure out some way to decrease the hiring pressure here in San Francisco, and so by creating a more remote workforce, and he may lead by example. I think the question ultimately may be for some investors, not that he's deciding to go live overseas and study culture there, but actually the market that he picked. And it may be the case that some investors in Twitter may ask that he go spend another 3 months over in Japan. Why Japan? Twitter's bigger than Facebook in Japan or any other market or any other competitor globally. And so if you could figure out, or in Japan, so you could figure out what's happening right in Japan and export it across the rest of the world, that would be time well spent.
So, I mean, I didn't want you to defend it or
in fact, that was the genesis of the 280 characters expansion, was understanding the way it was being used in Japan, and based on the character set in Japan, how tweets were being engaged with, and that the tweets at a larger character set were being driving higher engagement, ended up being the driver of the 280 being rolled out to the rest of the world.
You have a problem with this? Yale's Jeffrey Sonnenfeld calls the decision, quote, reckless, says it's, quote, irresponsible and negligent of the board to allow it.
I think the board, and I'm sure the board and Jack are going to have a conversation about that tweet. I think that I'll say this, and I mean that seriously. I'm sure the board and Jack are going to have a conversation about that.
And I haven't even read you the Galloway, Scott Galloway stuff.
I'm sure I can guess what that says. I'll take a little bit of a different angle to what Adam said, just to try to be, dramatic. Jack likes to test out ideas publicly. If you remember, he wrote a blog post, or maybe Sarah Fryer published it when Sarah left Square, the CFO of Square left to become CEO of Nextdoor. Jack or Sarah, one of them, published a sort of, here are the things that Jack said to Sarah upon leaving. And one of the things that Jack said was, you have to be willing to fail in public. And Jack will try out ideas and things that he's thinking to himself publicly, first, before discussing them privately with other people. And, that's just who he is.
Was this a jump the gun decision? Here's what Professor Scott Galloway tweeted, okay? And he wrote an op-ed as well. Quote, Jack Dorsey's a part-time CEO. 85% of his wealth comes from his afternoon job, Square. It's difficult to ask people to work evenings and weekends when the CEO works mornings and then moves to another continent. Jack must be replaced.
Look, as I said, I'm sure Jack and the executive team and the board are going to have a conversation about where the appropriate place to live is and how long you should spend there.
But, I mean, do you think he should go or not?
Well, no, you can't. I mean, I'm not going to sit here. I think Jack's done a terrific job with the team in the company. The team there loves him. The people who work there, you can see it on Twitter. They all appreciate working for him, the way he has their back, the way he thinks about the company, the way he articulates. I've said this many times on here. Jack speaks with the fluency of the inventor of the product, and that's a powerful thing in a company, to have the inventor of the product standing up and talking to you about how he thinks about it and how that contrasts with how he originally thought about it. There's no one who has more authority than that in the company.
Does your answer to the question mean that if he leans over to you in the cubicle next door and says, Adam, I'm thinking about going to Africa, you said, great, can I drive you to the airport? I mean, you're cool with that? You're cool with it?
Look, I think I'm not there, obviously, at the company, so I'm not cued in to what's actually the conversations are like. I will say Jack's got an incredibly deep bench, and he often goes. In fact, he spent, I think, a bunch of this year traveling around the world, meeting with Twitter partners Twitter advertisers and Twitter employees as well to get a more global view. That said, I understand the critique for sure, and I'm just giving you the other point of view.